A lot of people think that flow is this magical state achieved only by the world's top athletes and artists and entrepreneurs, and where you really get into the zone. It's like you're completely absorbed in the task at hand. All time and space disappears. Nothing can distract you. You feel unstoppable. Dare I say it, even limitless. But you don't have to be superhuman to get into the flow. You just need to know how to train your focus. So if you're tired of being in what my friend Evan Pagan calls the gray zone, where you're neither here nor there, you're doing one thing, but you're thinking about something else, so nothing really gets your full presence and attention, then listen up, because I want to give you some practical tips for how to get into the flow, how to get into the zone, how to feel unstoppable on a daily basis. My name is Marisa Murgatroyd, and I've built a successful company based on my ability to get into flow every single day, to focus and to crank out a huge amount of content online. And that's not something that I was able to do from day one of starting my business. It's something that took me about a decade to learn to do consistently, because I didn't really understand what flow was all about and how to get into flow predictably and reliably, so I could almost bend time and start to do more in a day than most people do in oftentimes a week. But like I said, for the longest time, I struggled to meet even basic deadlines because I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. I was so distracted, pinging from idea to idea to idea, that I couldn't really zone in on what I really wanted to do. I mean, years ago in undergrad, there's a famous story where I had a deadline for a term paper. And for the life of me, I could not get this paper done. But this was the first time the professor was inviting paper submissions via email. So what I ended up doing was I saved a blank document with the name of my paper, and I submitted this blank Word document to my professor. So he gets it, and maybe a week later he writes back to say, Marisa, I got your paper, but it's completely blank. And then I write back, OMG, I can't believe it. I spent weeks on this paper. What happened? And then, of course, he gave me this extension of 2 or 3 more weeks to write the paper. But I turned a task that should have taken me 2 weeks into something that ended up taking me 6 weeks, because I couldn't get into the flow, I couldn't train my focus, and I couldn't train my attention. But now, 20 years later, I'm so able to hyper-focus that people can't get my attention for the life of them when I'm in a state of flow. My friend Sekou Andrews, who's a master performer and stage speaker, teaches this exercise of speaking to an audience and then having someone come up and try to distract you, all kinds of theatrics, waving their hands in the air, making funny faces, doing anything they can to just get you out of your flow. And you know that you can handle any audience, any heckler, any situation when nobody can distract you from your message, from what you're saying, from being fully present to who you're speaking to and what it is that you're there to do in the room. Okay? So I went from being that girl who could not turn a term paper in on time to someone who has this unshakable, indestructible sense of focus and confidence in my work. So how did I get there? Well, there are 5 specific things that you need to know that I've started to do on a daily basis. And the very first thing is understanding what's called the challenge skill ratio. And this is the ratio which starts to create greatness inside of you because you're constantly being more challenged than your current level of skill, but it has to be precisely the right amount of challenge. So all of the research on flow states, on extreme sports and athletes show that when you challenge yourself about 4% beyond your current level of skill, you get into this state of rapid growth and evolution and expansion. So imagine sitting down at your desk and every single day doing something that's 4% beyond your current level of skill. Now, in a matter of 10 days, you could have grown your skill level by 40%. And in 100 days, you can grow your level of skill and ability by 400%. Now, 1,000 days, we're talking about 4,000% growth. And this is the reason why so many world records have been shattered in the last decade is that people have started to understand what it takes to get into that flow state and to challenge themselves on this continuous basis. And now athletes from around the world can tune onto YouTube and watch each other's tricks and try to kind of replicate what other athletes are doing, which relates to tip number 5, which I'm going to get to in just a bit. But really think about how can you stretch yourself to grow, not by a lot, but just by a little bit, by 4% every single day, by challenging yourself to go beyond your level of skill, your level of comfort every single day. Now that's living your life just beyond your comfort zone, but not so much that you start to feel overwhelmed and you shut down and you think that you can't do it. But not living below your skill level either, because that starts to create boredom, indifference, atrophy, where your skills start to diminish over time instead of grow, and you certainly do not reach a flow state when you're bored. Make sense? So let me give you another example from the world of gymnastics. You may have heard of Simone Biles, who's the top gymnast in the world right now. And she's starting to do moves in competition that no other gymnast in the world is daring to do because they're so dangerous and they're so challenging, but she's doing them. And a journalist asked her, well, Simone, why are you doing these moves? Because here's the thing, the judges aren't giving her any more points for these moves, right? She's kind of maxed out on the level of points that she gets. So there's no competitive advantage for doing these moves, but there's a lot more risk for doing them. And so when a journalist asked her, Simone, why are you doing these things? Why are you risking so much in terms of danger, in terms of points to do these moves? And she said, because I can. Because Simone understands that she's got to constantly be challenging herself beyond her current level of skill if she's going to maintain that flow state, if she's going to maintain that zone and maintain interest in what it is that she does. Otherwise, she's just transcended the sport because she's better than everybody else. But if she just lets that be a ceiling on where she can go and how much she can grow and what her level of performance could be, she's going to retire. She's going to be out because it's no longer going to be interesting to her. And then she's going to stop growing and someone else is going to come along and steal that medal from her. So that's a great story to show you the power of staying on the edge of your challenge skill ratio and growing and evolving every single day, and how quickly you can iterate your way to greater and greater levels of awesomeness beyond what you think is even possible for you right now. Now, the next thing that you want to understand is the indisputable power of laser focus, which means focusing on one thing with all your attention and only one thing. When you've got that unwavering focus, so much more comes out of you than when you're distracted, ping-ponging from thing to thing to thing. And the research even shows this because flow comes from focus, focusing your intention on that one particular thing. And it could be a task. It could be the enjoyment of nature, just being present on a hike or being outside. It could be appreciating art, going to a museum and just staring at a single painting until you almost merge with the painting and you see new levels of meaning in what's in that painting. It's also part of the discovery process, which is discovering something new for the first time. And you can discover something through a book or through a movie, through seeing through somebody else's eyes. Focus is what creates flow. And one of my favorite short stories is called The Bound Man by Isles Achinger. And it's this crazy story about a man who ends up being knocked out unconscious and wakes up and he's just bound up in rope, all alone in the wilderness. And he manages to kind of hop to a town. And he starts to do acrobatics and become this famous circus performer that people travel from hundreds of miles around to see. Because he was able to do these acrobatics and gymnastics and agility bound up in rope in ways that nobody else could, right? But one day he gets a little bit bored and he goes down to the banks of a stream with a knife in his throat and he just cuts off all the ropes. And he loses all of his agility and all of his focus. And so Isles Achinger writes, to have the feeling of being bound and at the same time the other, yet to know if one were unbound, it would be far worse. So flow so often comes from constraints, from that discipline, from that extreme focus on a single thing that you want to achieve, whether it's a task or a project or brainstorming or whatever it happens to be, sports. It's that focus of time and energy and attention. So you really want to understand the indisputable power of laser focus. And alongside of that is the third thing that you really want to focus on, which is becoming absolutely religious about eliminating all distractions and all interruptions when you're in this state of flow. Because you want to be able to relax into it and really be fully present without the world starting to intrude, without the people in your life starting to intrude. So there's some psychological studies that show that when you do what's called context switching, which is going from task to task, or even trying to understand what you want to do next, you lose anywhere from 20 to 80% of your overall productivity. So simply switching between two tasks means that each task only gets a maximum of 40% of your attention, and then you lose another 20% of your focus and your attention on just this context switching from thing to thing to thing to thing. Now, people talk about the dangers of multitasking. And it's not just multitasking, it's just allowing your energy, your attention, your focus to end up spreading across lots of different things versus that one thing that you want to do. Like Simone Biles landing that impossible, dangerous move. You better believe that when Simone Biles is running towards that pommel horse to land that super dangerous move, she's not focused on what she had for breakfast or what she's going to have for lunch or the fight that she had with her partner. She's focused on putting one foot in front of the other, running towards the pommel horse, when she's going to lift into the air, where she's going to put her hands, how she's going to flip multiple times through the air, and then stick the landing. And that's what you've got to do too, because when you allow those distractions, those interruptions to really impact what it is that you're focusing on, you lose so much of your energy, so much of your attention, and you would not be able to make the kind of moves that she's making. So those are the first 3 tips to focus on. Understanding the challenge skill ratio, the undisputable power of laser focus, and becoming just religious about eliminating all distractions and interruptions. And the next thing that you want to understand is how to set up your life so you're essentially stumbling into flow each and every morning. So my same friend, Evan Pagan, designed an online course called Wake Up Productive, which is all about doubling your productivity in, I think, 30 days. And one thing that he talks about is that if you want to develop a practice of, say, jogging every single morning, working out every single morning, but it's super difficult for you to motivate yourself to actually do it, you want to create a morning routine that has you stumble into the workout, which means the day before you do everything that you can to eliminate any potential resistance or friction points to actually working out. So you choose your workout clothes, you get your shoes, you get your socks, you get everything, and you literally put them in a pile right on your way to the bathroom. So you kind of stumble over the gear that you need to work out. Maybe you have a note on your bathroom mirror at the same time that says, time to work out. Whatever it happens to be, you create the conditions and environment of your life to stumble into flow each day. So how that works for me is that when I set up my block times every single day, I don't just write block time. I write exactly what I'm going to create in that particular block. So I know that I'm going to be working on outlining, say, this particular YouTube video, or I'm going to write module 3, video 12 in my Experience Product Masterclass program, or I'm going to work on the new online education Gold Rush webinar. Whatever it happens to be, I know exactly what it is that I'm going to focus on the next morning. And I even open the Word document or the Google document that I'm going to be writing in. So it's on my computer as soon as I open it up. I close out my email. I close out my Slack. So when I open my computer, the thing that I'm going to be working on that morning in my block time is right there and everything else is closed. And the other thing that that does is it allows my subconscious to go to work on the script or the thing that I'm going to write ahead of time. So when I go to bed knowing that I'm going to write that new online education Gold Rush the next morning, my brain's already starting to think about it. So when I wake up, it's like I'm flooded with ideas. And I've got these little notes in my shower called aqua notes. And I start even writing down opening sentences and lines in terms of phrases and ideas and thoughts. And I can barely get to my computer fast enough. And it's gotten to the point where I wait to shower until about 3 hours into the day. I don't do my workout. I don't do my shower until I've had my morning block time because I'm so ready to write almost as soon as I wake up because I'm stumbling into my flow state. It's like right there, ready to happen as soon as I wake up in the morning. So a lot of times by like 9 or 10 a.m. in the morning, I've done the biggest work for the day. And everything else I do feels like gravy at that point. I've already achieved my flow state. I've already done more during that block than so many people might do, even in a few days or a week. And that feels so productive and so fulfilling. And I've developed confidence in muscle memory that I'm going to be able to create that thing that I put on my schedule in that amount of time. Because flow and creativity thrives in what? In constraints, right? So you want to create the constraints and the conditions to basically stumble into flow. And remember that context switching, that you lose up to 20% of your productivity in context switching. So by closing out all of those tabs, by having that Google Doc open, there is no context switching for me when I wake up. There is no, what was I going to do again? Or how do I find that Google Doc? Or let me log on to my email and get the thing that I was supposed to do. I just know when it's there and I stumble into it. So that's tip number 4. And the last tip is perhaps my favorite tip of all. It's committing to mastery. So like I mentioned at the start, these top extreme sports athletes are breaking world record after world record right now because they're able to just watch and learn from the top athletes around the world who are filming YouTube videos of their stunts. They're able to kind of learn from people just everywhere. And that's something that my friend Ron Friedman calls decoding greatness. So when you're actually able to watch or decode a master work by another artist or athlete or entrepreneur, it sharpens your own skill set because you almost have to get into the thought process or the creative process or the somatic process of that particular person to recreate the thing it is that they did, which expands you beyond your current level of skills by walking in the shoes of an existing master. So I always also like to say that new inputs create new outputs. So when you allow yourself to get out of your daily routine from time to time, whether that's traveling, whether that's reading books, whether that's meeting new people or having conversations that expand yourself, you're actually creating new inputs that ultimately feed the pattern recognition machine inside of your brain because brains are incredible at pattern recognition. So then you're able to create new outputs, or in those situations where you're creating a new body of work, you've got all those conversations in books and life experiences that you can bring to bear on that particular thing. So according to Ron in his book, Decoding Greatness, the research actually shows that when you copy a master work, which is why during the Renaissance, all the great painters copied other painters, just stroke by stroke by stroke. When it comes to creating your own painting later on, you actually bring more originality and more creativity to it. It's not like you're copying somebody else, but the act of copying, the act of decoding and reverse engineering sharpens your skill set and your ability to kind of pattern recognize and generate new works in the future. So I really believe in committing to mastery. And what I love about mastery is that when you're really on the master's path, when you really make the commitment to mastery, it's not just about 10,000 hours. I think I've put hundreds of thousands of hours into developing my skills as a trainer, as a facilitator, as a coach at this point in time. But the thing about being a master is that you realize that you will never achieve full mastery because there's always more to learn and to grow. And for me, that's so exciting because it means, like Simone, I can still make things better. I can still evolve. I can still pull off moves that I didn't think possible 1 year ago. And it's that has me excited to wake up each day and continue to create. So a famous American designer, Milton Glaser, says that it's a lucky person who can maintain their sense of wonderment throughout their entire career, because so many people kind of get bored and check out in the third act. So this committing to mastery is all about maintaining your sense of wonderment and enthusiasm and excitement for what you do, because when you can do that, you're excited every single morning to wake up and to get to work, because you don't even know what's going to come out. You may know what it is that you're going to focus on, that new online education Gold Rush webinar, but you don't know what you're actually going to write when you show up to that blank page, when you stumble into your flow, when you put yourself in the conditions where you're 4% beyond your current challenge skill ratio and you're eliminating distractions and interruptions. That's when the greatest work of your life will continue to show up day after day after day. So you do not have to be superhuman to achieve a flow state. You simply have to know how to train your focus. And this is something that gets stronger and stronger with time as you continue to practice the constraints and the discipline that you need to create those conditions for flow. So don't give up if you try once or twice or even 10 or 20 times and you don't quite get in the zone like you want to get into. It's a muscle that can be developed and strengthened like any others. I've got a couple other videos here on YouTube you may also want to check out. You may want to check out my video on why most people will remain average because they're not committing to that mastery path, right? But there's a lot more to it as well. And also how to improve your productivity using the 80-20 rule, okay? So check out those videos and commit to giving this a try in the next 24 hours before you forget everything I just shared. So keep watching, keep learning, keep growing, and keep evolving. See you in the next video.